ミラノ派が分かればカウンセリングが見えてくる。ミラノ派の第一人者、パウロ・ベルトランド先生にお聞きします。信頼について質問します。カウンセラーにとって、クライアントから信頼されることが最も重要で、最も難しいと考えています。どうしたらカウンセラーはクライアントから信頼されることができますか？ I have a question about trust. For a counselor, I believe that being trusted by the client is the most important and most difficult thing. How can a counselor gain the trust of the client?
This is quite complicated because of course there are no techniques to create trust. Trust is a really untechnical thing and very basic. There are even some theories that say that trust between clients and therapists is the first, the most important variable in determining the outcome of therapy. So actually, and I agree with that. Without trust, without a good therapeutic relationship, you simply don't do therapy. It doesn't work. So I think that and there are some approaches that develop the specific techniques to enhance trust. But what I think and what we think is that trust is quite untechnical. It's something that comes before. So I think trust has something to do with the therapist's posture. And what I mean by that is rather than being very strategic, the therapist, in order to gain trust, must be very open. So open means I try always to tell the truth. So and it's important because sometimes you think I have to say to the client things that are really helpful to the client, and so means that sometimes it's better if I don't tell the truth. And whereas I think, but this, if you don't tell the truth, people get it. And we said in another conversation that a good observer can always tell whether another is lying with an accuracy of 90%. Now, and usually we think that we as therapists can say whether the client is lying, but while we observe the client is observing us. So the client can tell if we are not really open, really sincere, truthful. And so this means that if we say something in order to reach an effect, what the other will get will be, oh, this person here is trying to reach an effect. So this person here is not really saying what he says in my case. And so the idea, and this was very true when we were using, strategic ways of doing therapy, because in strategy, you have to lie. Because a strategy is something where you don't tell what you're going to do, because otherwise the strategy doesn't work anymore. So at a certain point, I think we decided not to be strategic anymore. And from strategic, we enter into this idea, we simply tell the truth. If I feel there is something that the client is not ready to listen to, which is, of course, is always possible, I simply refrain from saying, I don't say anything. I won't say to a client, for example, I think you are a nice person if I don't feel that the client is a nice person, because at that point I'm lying, and I think this lying undermines truth. So I won't say anything. But sooner or later I will say something. Sometimes I feel that you choose not to be nice to other people, and yet I think you can be. I wonder why you tend not to do it. Or I will wait. So there will be once when the person will be nice to others, and I say, oh, well, you were much nicer than in other moments, so I wonder what happened this time. Something like that, rather than say, oh, yes, you don't worry, you are a nice person. Everybody likes you. When, if it's not true, it doesn't work. And I think this and the openness of the therapist in admitting that the therapist can be wrong sometimes, this helps the people developing trust. So, for example, if I got something wrong, I usually say, I'm sorry, I make apologies. I said something wrong, and I'm really sorry for that. I don't understand why it was wrong. So please explain to me. And lately, I arrived at the idea that in the very first session, you see the client or the family, you talk with them, and you have get your basic information and so on, and then you have to decide how to go on with whether to go on or not with the therapist. And so I ask people very openly, now think about it. Did you feel okay in talking with me? Do you feel that I can be the right therapist for you? Because if you don't worry, I have other names, other colleagues. So if you feel you're not okay, it's not a problem for me. And this, I will admit that sometimes people don't like me. It happens, and it's not a tragedy. And so from this on, I think the person can think I'm really open to everything, and this creates trust. I had to work sometimes with people who were referred and they were kind of forced to go to therapy. For example, sometimes I had couple that came that were sent to therapy in order to strengthen their parental abilities, and usually those couples don't want to come to therapy because they think they are good parents enough, and so they don't need anything. But there is a judge who say, if you want your children back, you have to do 10 sessions of therapy strengthening your parental abilities. So you get people that don't want to do therapy in the first place. So here the idea is trust is impossible. And so usually in this case, I begin the session by saying, listen, I know that you are not willing to come here. I know that you don't like the very idea of being here and you think it's completely useless. But you were forced. I accepted this job. And so it means that we have to accept each other anyway. So tell me, how do you think we can make the best out of those sessions, since it's impossible to avoid them? And so you see, it seems it doesn't seem the best way of engaging people, but at least people know that I know that they know. You don't want me. I know that you don't want me, but you have to go on. Please tell me what we can do. So I give back to you the possibility of taking something out of the session. And usually people respond positively to that because they feel that since I accept the limitation, to a limit, I can be trusted. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I answered because it's very complicated. One more thing, I learned this because of my experience as a psychiatrist. Because sometimes when I worked in a psychiatric ward, you had to admit people in the ward against their will, so they were forced to stay in the ward, and so how can you create a therapeutic alliance with them that is necessary? You cannot just pump into them drugs in order to break the resistance. It's not ethical. So the idea is, listen, you have admitted here by the police, so you are forced to stay here. I am the psychiatric on duty, so I am forced to be with you. And I said again, okay, what can we do? Tell me what can we do? And then if you don't like how we treat it, you can appeal to a judge. That's true. And if you want, you have a telephone, you try to call the judge, will give you the number and so on and so forth. But then in the meantime, what can we do? And I got very positive responses to them. Once again, not all the time, but most of the time.
Thank you. I asked this question because in my experience, many cases establish trust relationship with client became main issue. Took a long time, 1 year, 2 years, they said I won't care my depression, but actually create a trusted relationship with between client counselor become main issue. And when I could do that, everything solved the problem.
Yes. Yes, because at that point, what you say becomes more useful. Otherwise, it's something that people cannot accept completely, and if they can't, of course, so you are saying something and the people are listening to half of that, it doesn't work. But to listen completely, you must develop complete trust. Then you can do whatever you want. People will arrive to trust you when they are ready to. Some people get it in the second session, and some people get it in the second year, and you cannot know. And it's impossible to tell, because sometimes there are people who appear enthusiastic, and then after 6 months they say, I pretended to be enthusiastic, but I was not. I was probing you to see whether you were. Yeah.
That happened.
And I think another virtue of the therapist should be patience. We must be very patient in accepting that sometimes we need a long time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Poco